Welcome back to our channel, where the hidden corners of history are brought vividly to life. Here, we don't just recount events. We step inside them, walking the creaking decks, feeling the salt wind, and listening to the whispers of those who lived it. Tonight, we set sail into one of the most charged and uncertain nights in human history. The moment Christopher Columbus and his crew first sighted land after weeks adrift on the endless Atlantic. The night presses in like a living thing. You hear the creak of the ship's timbers as it rocks on a black, restless ocean. The canvas above you thrashes like a living beast, slapping against the mast as gusts of salty wind howl through the rigging. Rain lashes your face, sharp and cold, stinging like needles. The smell is thick. Brine, sweat, wet rope, and the sour staleness of men who have been at sea for too long. Every groan of the hull feels like a question. How much more can this fragile vessel endure? Then, a voice. The low murmur of men clustered near the prow, arguing in hushed tones that carry in the gale. Some whisper of mutiny, others murmur prayers. Every face you glimpse in the flickering lantern light is drawn tight with exhaustion. Cheeks sunken, eyes wide and hollow, lips cracked from weeks of salted bread and stagnant water. And yet, amidst this despair, there is something else. A fragile thread of hope, invisible but unmistakable, strung taut between every man aboard the Santa Maria, the Niña, and the Pinta. For 33 days they have sailed west, further from the world they knew, guided by Columbus's relentless certainty that land must lie just beyond the horizon. Columbus himself paces the deck, boots thudding softly on wet planks. His cloak is soaked through, heavy against his shoulders, but his spine is unbowed. In the dim lantern glow, his face looks carved in shadow, his jaw set, his eyes scanning the darkness as if sheer will could pierce the storm. To his men, he is stubborn, even reckless. To himself, he is chosen. He believes his voyage is no gamble, but destiny, ordained by God and confirmed by every calculation he has made. But tonight he feels the weight of silence from the heavens. He knows the truth that his men fear. They have sailed further than any mapmaker has charted, further than any European eyes have seen. Supplies are dwindling, and every wave that crashes over the deck gnaws at the fragile faith holding his crew together. Mutiny is no longer a whisper in the dark. It is a shadow that stalks his every step. The storm howls louder, a chorus of wind and sea. Somewhere in the chaos, Rodrigo de Triana, a sharp-eyed sailor from the Pinta, leans over the railing, straining his vision against the endless black. He has been searching for weeks, his eyes burning from salt and sleeplessness. Tonight, something catches his gaze. Not the white froth of a wave, not the endless churn of water, but something darker against the darker sea. He blinks, heart pounding. Was it real? Or only the trick of a weary mind? Behind him, the men curse and spit. They are tired of false promises, tired of following a captain whose certainty feels like madness. But still, hope is a stubborn ember. And in this stormy night, with the wind tearing at the sails and every heart balanced between despair and defiance, a cry will soon break across the water that will change the course of the world forever. Columbus grips the railing, rain streaming down his face. He whispers a prayer, not for safety, but for vindication, for land, for proof that the world will remember him not as a madman lost at sea, but as the man who reached across the ocean and found another world. The storm rages on. The ships pitch and roll, lanterns swinging wildly, shadows leaping across soaked decks. Every man clings to rope, to mast, to faith. And in that midnight chaos, as the wind begins to shift and the rain slackens for a heartbeat, eyes strain toward the horizon, waiting for the shape that will emerge from the darkness. The night is almost over. But its final hour will mark the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The storm begins to ease, though the sea still heaves beneath the ships like a restless giant. The rain has slowed to a mist, and the sails hang heavy, dripping, their edges tattered from the night's assault. Lanterns sway in the damp wind, their light throwing trembling arcs across soaked decks. The men stand where they can, their eyes hollow, their bodies trembling not only from exhaustion, but from something more dangerous: doubt. You feel it in the air, thicker than the salt spray, heavier than the humidity that clings to your skin. The crew is unraveling. They mutter in low voices, sometimes falling into angry bursts. For weeks, Columbus has promised that land was just beyond the horizon, but the horizon has stretched endlessly, day after day, into nothing but ocean. The food is nearly gone. The barrels of water stink of rot. The men's tempers have grown as bitter as the hard biscuits they chew. A sailor spits on the deck, glaring toward Columbus's shadowed figure. "He's led us into death," one growls. Another adds, "Better to turn back now than sink with his madness." The word spreads like fire through dry grass. Mutiny. Not shouted aloud, not yet, but whispered, sharpened, polished in the dark like a hidden blade. And yet, there is a counterweight. For all his flaws, Columbus radiates conviction like a torch in the night. He stalks the deck with the authority of someone who cannot, will not, admit defeat. To his men, this is arrogance. To Columbus, it is survival. He knows that if he shows the smallest crack in his faith, the expedition will shatter around him. He calls them together under the dripping sails. His voice carries through the mist, steady and commanding, though his throat burns with exhaustion. "We are close," he insists. "I smell it in the air. I see signs in the water. Hold faith a little longer, and you will see what I have promised." The sailors glance at one another, their faces hard to read in the lantern glow. Some scoff, some shake their heads, but others, weary, desperate, cling to the possibility. A handful of them have noticed the same things Columbus points to: a drifting branch with fresh leaves, a carved stick, even a small bird circling the mast that could not have flown from Spain. Signs, hints, fragments of proof that the ocean might finally yield land. And then there is Rodrigo de Triana, the lookout. He has been quiet, watchful. His eyes are bloodshot from staring into the void, but he clings to the rail, scanning. He thinks again of what he glimpsed through the storm, a darker shadow against the black horizon. He hasn't spoken yet, not with certainty, but the memory scratches at him like a thorn. Could it have been land, or only the phantom of a desperate mind? Columbus senses the men's unrest. He bargains with them, sharp and practical. "Give me 3 days more," he says. 3 days, and if we do not see land, we turn back. His words are a lifeline tossed into stormy water. The men grumble, but the promise calms them. 3 days is short enough to hope, short enough to endure. The deck's quiet, though the tension remains like a taut rope ready to snap. The men drift back to their posts, muttering prayers, staring at the waves, gnawing on what scraps of food remain. Some of them grip their rosaries until their knuckles whiten. Others carve rough marks into wood, counting days like tallying wounds. Every man aboard knows he has wagered his life on a vision. And through it all, Columbus watches the horizon. His heart beats in rhythm with the waves, each swell a reminder of what is at stake. He is not blind to the risk of failure, but he clings to the certainty that the world is wider than anyone dares imagine. The Atlantic cannot stretch on forever. Somewhere out there lies land. He believes it with a fervor that burns brighter than fear. The sky clears a little more, revealing a scatter of stars. They glimmer faintly above the black ocean, guiding lights for a world still divided between known and unknown. The crew settles uneasily into silence, the storm's fury giving way to the hush of anticipation. But beneath that fragile calm, something stirs, a restless electricity that no storm could match. They are close. They can feel it. And soon, one voice will cry out in the darkness, a sound that will echo across centuries. Tierra, Tierra, land. But the night is not finished testing them. Before the dawn, fear and hope will collide in a way that no man on those ships could forget. The night stretches on, heavy and endless. The storm has passed, but its memory lingers in the creak of the timbers and the shiver of wet ropes against the mast. A pale, broken moon slips in and out of clouds, scattering faint light across the water, enough to show the restless rise and fall of the waves. On the Pinta, Rodrigo de Triana has not left his post. His hands grip the damp railing, his eyes straining into the horizon, as though he could drag land out of the darkness by sheer will. His back aches, his eyelids sag with exhaustion, but he dares not look away. Every man aboard knows that the reward for spotting land is glory, and a lifetime's worth of pride. But for Rodrigo, it is not just reward, it is survival. To prove he wasn't imagining shadows, to give shape to the hope gnawing at him, to silence the whispers of mutiny before they rise into violence. The crew is restless. Below deck, men murmur in fitful half-sleep, twisting on their straw pallets. On the open deck, others sit huddled in damp cloaks, faces pale, lips moving in prayers too soft to catch. The sea has stripped them bare, whittled them down to hunger, bone, and faith. You hear a cough, harsh and ragged, from one corner. A man spits blood-tinged phlegm into the dark. Scurvy has begun to stalk them. Teeth loosen, gums swell, muscles weaken. Even the strongest among them are marked by the voyage's toll. The ocean is no blank canvas of promise. It is a predator, patient and merciless. And yet, above it all, Columbus moves like a man lit from within. His boots thud against the planks as he paces, his head bent toward the horizon, his lips moving in murmured prayers. He pauses often, inhaling the air with deliberate care. He claims he can smell the scent of land, the faint, fresh greenness of soil and leaves carried across the waves. Some sailors scoff, but others inhale deeply too, wondering if they too detect something more than salt and seaweed. Rodrigo blinks hard, rubbing his eyes. And then, he sees it again. A shape, darker than the sea, steadier than the fleeting play of moonlight. His breath catches. He leans forward, straining against the railing, every muscle taut. For a heartbeat, he doubts himself. What if it's only another cloud? What if hope has tricked him once more? The men will laugh, curse, and scorn him for chasing illusions. But then a faint glimmer stirs along the line of darkness. Not moonlight, not wave. A glow. A shimmer that pulses and then steadies, as if fire were burning faintly on the horizon. Rodrigo's heart slams against his ribs. He does not think. He shouts. Tierra, Tierra, land, land. The cry cuts through the night like lightning. At first, the crew stirs sluggishly, unbelieving. But then men leap to their feet, rushing to the rail, eyes straining. The word spreads from mouth to mouth, growing louder, wilder, until it drowns out the sound of the sea itself. Tierra, Tierra, Columbus freezes, his breath catching. He lifts his head, following the direction of Rodrigo's pointing arm. And there it is, faint, distant, but undeniable. A shoreline, a glimmer of firelight, alive against the dark horizon. The deck erupts. Men cheer, cry, fall to their knees. Some laugh in disbelief, others sob, clutching one another as though salvation has broken upon them. They cross themselves, muttering prayers of gratitude, their voices tangled with relief and awe. Columbus grips the railing until his knuckles pale. His chest heaves with the force of his conviction vindicated. The months of ridicule in Spain, the doubts of scholars, the whispers of mutiny, the endless ocean, all of it collapses in this one triumphant moment. He whispers, "Gracias a Dios." Thanks be to God. But even as the men rejoice, their joy carries an undertone. Fear. Because no one knows what waits on that unseen shore. It could be salvation, yes. Food, fresh water, land. But it could also mean danger. Unknown people, unseen enemies. The world beyond the horizon is no longer imagination. It is real. The ships creak as they adjust their course, sails angled toward the distant glow. Every man stares into the night as though afraid to blink, lest the vision vanish. And yet, the closer they edge, the more undeniable it becomes. Land. After weeks of ocean, they have reached the edge of something new. Columbus closes his eyes, lifting his face to the salt wind. In his heart, he believes this is the beginning of a new chapter for all Christendom. To his men, it is survival. To him, it is destiny. The cry of Tierra still echoes across the decks, and with it, the world has shifted forever. The night slowly bleeds into morning. The horizon, once a black wall, begins to soften with the faintest gray, then violet, then a muted wash of pale gold. The men crowd the decks, eyes fixed in the same direction, unwilling to look away even for a breath. The cry of Tierra still hums through their bodies, half a chant, half a prayer. None dare sleep now. They are tethered to that distant promise of land, as though their very lives hang on it. The glow Rodrigo saw has not vanished. In the shifting light, it becomes clearer, sharper. A low line where sea gives way to something solid. At first, it looks like nothing more than a smudge against the dawn, but slowly, as the sun climbs, it takes shape. A stretch of coastline, fringed with dark shadows that ripple in the morning haze. Trees, green, thick, and alive. You can almost hear the collective gasp. The men, hardened by weeks of despair, now blink as though they have been reborn. Their faces, gaunt and sunken, soften with something like wonder. Tears glisten in the corners of eyes that had forgotten hope. For so long, the ocean was an endless graveyard. Now, here it is. Salvation. Columbus stands at the prow, his cloak whipping in the wind, his eyes locked on the sight. For years he has dreamed of this moment, charted it, defended it, prayed for it. And now, with the horizon lit by dawn, he sees not just land, but vindication. Every sneer in the courts of Spain, every scholar who mocked his theories, every sailor who cursed him during the voyage, all of it dissolves before the living proof of his vision. God has brought us here, he says, voice rough but firm. The men murmur their assent, some crossing themselves, others falling to their knees in gratitude. They whisper names of saints, of loved ones left behind in Spain, of promises made and almost broken. As the light grows, more details emerge. The coastline glows green, dotted with palm fronds and thick vegetation, shimmering in the early sun. White sand gleams where the waves lap gently onto the shore. Birds wheel overhead, not the lost wanderers of the open sea, but bright, colorful creatures that swoop and call in shrill cries. Their very presence is proof. This land is alive, rich, abundant. On deck, men whisper of food, of fresh water, of shade and rest. Some clasp their hands together as though afraid the vision might vanish if they speak too loud. Others laugh, the wild, broken laughter of men who have stared into death and suddenly been given life again. And yet, beneath the jubilation, another thread pulses. Tension. Because though land is before them, it is not their land. Somewhere among those trees, unseen eyes might already be watching. The men know it, though none say it aloud. Salvation and danger have arrived together. Rodrigo de Triana, still gripping the railing, allows himself a smile. For all the months of suffering, he was the one to spot it first. His name will carry forward, if only as a footnote, but tonight, on this deck, he feels a quiet pride burning through exhaustion. Columbus gives orders swiftly, his voice rising above the waves. The ships will hold until daylight fully clears, then anchor close enough for a landing. No man is to rush forward blindly. Discipline must be kept. Still, he cannot hide the triumph in his face. To him, this coastline is no mere island. It is the edge of Asia, the fabled lands of the Indies, and the doorway to riches promised by centuries of merchants' tales. The men begin preparing, checking the rigging, unrolling ropes, adjusting sails to steady the ships as they drift nearer. Every movement is infused with energy, urgency, as though they have been given new bodies. Their exhaustion has not vanished, but it has been conquered by the vision of shore. The sun rises higher, spilling molten gold across the water. The coastline is no longer shadow, but vivid and unmistakable. The men can now see waves breaking on the shore, foam white against the sand. They can see the swaying of tall trees, the rustle of green leaves in the wind. They can see, too, what looks like trails through the forest, signs that this land is not empty. The murmur spreads through the crew, uneasy and awed. Someone whispers, "Do you think they'll be friendly?" Another, more cautious, mutters, "Or will they see us as enemies?" No answer comes, only the creak of the ships, the caw of birds overhead, and the steady advance of the unknown shore. Columbus closes his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The scent is different now, earthy, warm, filled with the perfume of leaves and flowers carried across the breeze. It is the smell of promise, and he knows that once his boots touch that sand, the world will never again be the same. The men stand together in silence as the ships inch closer. Some hearts beat with relief, others with fear. All of them know they are no longer adrift at sea. They are on the threshold of discovery and of history. The anchors drop with a heavy splash, chains rattling as the ships settle into shallow waters. The men lean over the rails, eyes wide, staring at the beach that now glimmers only a stone's throw away. The coastline lies waiting in the bright morning light, a strip of white sand bordered by tall palms and thick green forest, alive with the hum of birdsong. After endless weeks of water, the sight of solid earth feels almost impossible. Columbus orders the longboats lowered. The sailors scramble with sudden vigor, their exhaustion replaced by something sharper, anticipation laced with fear. The ropes creak, wood scrapes, and the small boats thud into the waves below. For the first time in over a month, the men feel the pull of the sea beneath them, not as endless exile, but as a bridge to salvation. "You will row steadily," Columbus commands, his voice carrying across the deck. "No chaos, no haste. We go as men chosen by God." And his tone is both stern and triumphant, every word meant to remind them that this moment belongs not only to survival, but to destiny. The first longboat pushes forward, oars dipping into the turquoise water, pulling toward the glistening shore. You hear the splash of the blades, the ragged breaths of the men, the pounding of hearts caught between awe and unease. The forest looms closer, its canopy a tangle of green shadows, alive with strange cries. The air grows warmer, richer, carrying scents that are nothing like Spain. Damp earth, flowers sweet and unfamiliar, and the faint musk of unseen life. Columbus sits upright in the bow, his cloak brushing the wood, one hand gripping a flag adorned with the royal standard of Castile and Aragon. His eyes are fixed forward, as though he fears the vision might vanish if he glances away. Around him, sailors mutter prayers. One clutches a rosary, lips trembling. Another dips his fingers into the water, tasting the salt as though to confirm that it is real. The longboats scrape against the sand. Silence falls, heavy and electric. For a moment, none move. The men stare at the beach as if the earth itself were a miracle too great to touch. Then Columbus rises. Slowly, deliberately, he steps forward, boots sinking into the wet sand. The first footprint marks the threshold between two worlds. The sailors follow, stumbling from the boats, falling to their knees. Some kiss the ground, clutching fistfuls of sand, sobbing with relief. Others cross themselves again and again, whispering prayers of gratitude. A few simply collapse, their bodies too frail to carry the weight of such a moment. Columbus plants the flag in the sand, driving its pole deep into the earth. He raises his voice, loud and solemn. "In the name of their most Catholic Majesties, Ferdinand and Isabella, I claim this land for Spain." The words echo across the quiet beach, carried by the wind into the waiting forest. The men cheer, though their voices are hoarse. To them, it is a proclamation of victory, proof that their suffering was not in vain. Yet beneath their cries, there is unease. The land is not empty. They know it. Even as they celebrate, eyes dart toward the tree line, half expecting figures to emerge. And then, silence. Only the surf pounding rhythmically, the cry of birds overhead, the rustle of palms swaying in the breeze. The forest watches, but does not answer. The men begin to scatter, some venturing a few steps inland, touching bark, breaking leaves between their fingers. They marvel at the colors, green deeper than any they have known, flowers of crimson and gold, birds that shimmer like living jewels. After weeks of gray sea and sky, the land feels almost overwhelming in its richness. Columbus, though, remains still. His gaze sweeps the beach, the trees, the horizon beyond. To him, this is more than salvation, more than wonder. It is the opening of a door he has imagined for years, the passage to Asia, to wealth, to glory. He sees not only the sand beneath his boots, but the kingdoms he believes lie beyond. Behind him, sailors laugh, shout, and weep in relief. But already, questions stir in the silence. Who lives here? Will they welcome or resist? Will this new world prove to be paradise or peril? For now, though, those questions are swallowed by the sheer immensity of the moment. After weeks of despair, the men stand on land once more. Their footprints mark a beach that had, until this morning, been untouched by their world. And with that step, history has turned. The beach lies behind them now, its sand still marked with fresh footprints and the planted banner swaying gently in the breeze. Ahead rises the wall of the forest, dense and humming with life. The men hesitate at its edge, the shadows beneath the trees cool and inviting, yet filled with a mystery that makes every heartbeat quicken. You hear the rustle of palm fronds, the cries of unseen birds, and the faint trickle of water somewhere deeper within. For weeks the ocean has been their prison, an endless desert of salt and wind. Now, here, everything feels saturated with life. The air is thicker, fragrant with scents unfamiliar, sweet blossoms, damp earth, a musk that clings to the lungs. The sailors inhale greedily, as though they had forgotten that the world could smell like anything other than tar, rope, and rot. A small group ventures first. One man breaks a branch from a low tree, holding up broad leaves as though they were relics. Another stoops to scoop up soil, letting it crumble through his fingers. It is dark, rich, unlike the parched earth of Spain in summer. He stares at it with reverence, as if it alone proves the land is blessed. Not far from the shore, they discover a stream trickling from the forest, its water glistening clear in the morning light. Without hesitation, The men fall to their knees, cupping their hands, drinking deeply. The cold sweetness shocks their throats, washing away weeks of foul, brackish water. Some weep openly as they drink, unable to stop themselves. Columbus watches in silence, his own lips curling into a smile. It is not only survival they have found here, it is renewal. Further inland, they find fruits dangling from branches, bright, waxy, strange. A sailor plucks one, hesitates, then bites. Juice spills down his chin, sweet and tangy, unlike anything he has ever tasted. The others follow, biting into the strange bounty, laughing, their mouths sticky with juice. For the first time in weeks, their hunger eases not with hard biscuits or salted meat, but with the offerings of a land that seems to overflow with generosity. And yet, unease lingers. The forest is not silent. From within, the cries of animals rise. Harsh calls, rustling movements, the snap of twigs beneath unseen feet. Every shadow feels alive. The men glance at one another, hands drifting to the hilts of their knives. If this land can feed them, it can also hide dangers they do not yet understand. Columbus kneels by the stream, washing his hands in the cool water. He studies the trees towering above, their canopies braided with vines, their trunks alive with insects that shimmer like drops of light. To him, it is confirmation of God's design. He speaks softly. This is a paradise, a sign of providence. His words ripple among the men, some nodding eagerly, others keeping their eyes fixed on the shadows. Then they find footprints, small, human, pressed into the soil near the tree line. The sailors freeze, staring at them. Proof. They are not alone. A murmur runs through the group. Some whisper with excitement. They had expected people after all. Others stiffen with fear, gripping weapons more tightly. What kind of people? Will they see strangers as guests or as invaders? The men wait, listening, but no one emerges. The forest watches, silent and unreadable. Columbus kneels to study the prints, his fingers tracing their edges in the dirt. He sees opportunity where others see threat. For him, these marks are the first doorway to trade, alliance, and conquest. To the sailors, they are a reminder that this paradise is not theirs to claim unchallenged. The group withdraws back toward the beach, carrying fruits, leaves, and branches as tokens of proof. Their voices are hushed now, their eyes darting often to the forest. The excitement of discovery thrums in their veins, but so too does a deeper awareness. They have stepped into a living world that will not remain silent forever. Back on the sand, the men gather around their findings. They marvel at the fruits, pass around leaves, speak in awe of the water's sweetness. Some already imagine the riches Spain will reap. Others dream only of filling their stomachs and sleeping on solid ground. Yet all of them know this. They are no longer sailors lost at sea. They are intruders in a land that will change them, and the world forever. The sun climbs higher, turning the water to gold, and with it rises the sense that something greater has begun. The morning deepens, the sun burning hotter as it climbs the sky. The sailors lounge on the sand, chewing fruit, drinking from gourds filled with fresh water, their laughter rising and falling with relief. Yet behind their joy lies a taut thread of silence, a collective awareness that eyes are watching from the green wall beyond the beach. And then, movement. From the shade of the trees, figures emerge, slowly, carefully. The sailors go still, their voices cutting off mid-laugh, as though the air itself has thickened. The first to appear are men, their skin bronzed by the sun, their bodies lithe and strong. They wear little, only woven fibers about their waists, their dark hair tied back. In their hands they carry spears, though the tips are lowered, not raised. Behind them, women and children hover in the shadows, peering wide-eyed at the strangers who have stepped onto their shores. The sailors murmur among themselves, some clutching knives or crossbows, others frozen in awe. None of them have seen people like this before. Their skin, their ornaments of bone and shell, their tattoos. It is as though the sailors have stepped into a living page of legend. You hear the forest breathing around them, the rustle of leaves, the calls of birds overhead, the steady hiss of the sea behind. And between the two groups of men, silence. Columbus steps forward. His cloak billows in the breeze, his hand resting lightly on the flag planted in the sand. His eyes fix on the islanders with an intensity that is both curious and calculating. He bows his head slightly, a gesture of peace, though his presence radiates authority. Behind him, the sailors shift, uneasy, torn between fear and reverence for their captain's boldness. One of the islanders steps closer, his eyes scanning Columbus's pale skin, his beard, the glint of metal buckles on his boots. He speaks, a stream of words musical and sharp, unintelligible to European ears. The sailors exchange looks of confusion. Some chuckle nervously, others grip their weapons tighter. Columbus responds in Castilian, his voice firm, almost ceremonial. "We come in peace, in the name of the great kings of Spain." The words mean nothing to the islanders, yet his tone and gestures carry weight. He points to the sky, then to the earth, then spreads his hands as though offering friendship. The islander tilts his head, then gestures toward the forest. His companions murmur, their eyes darting from the sailors' swords to the shimmering steel of their helmets. They have never seen such materials before. The glint of metal, the sharp edge of a blade, these are as strange and mesmerizing to them as the land is to the sailors. The first exchange is tentative. A sailor offers a bead of colored glass, holding it out on his palm. The islander hesitates, then steps forward, taking it between his fingers, turning it in the sun. His eyes widen at the brightness, the strange perfection of its surface. In return, he unhooks a necklace of shells from his throat and places it gently into the sailor's hand. A murmur ripples through both groups, a fragile bridge of trust built in silence. But not all are at ease. Some sailors mutter under their breath, eyeing the spears, their hands twitching near their weapons. Others glance nervously at the women and children gathering in the shadows, whispering among themselves. Fear mingles with wonder, suspicion with awe. Columbus seizes the moment. He kneels in the sand, scooping a handful of earth, lifting it toward the sky before letting it scatter through his fingers. His gesture is meant to declare possession, but the islanders see only a man performing a strange ritual. They laugh softly, their tension easing, though they keep their distance. Hours pass in a delicate balance. Trinkets are exchanged, beads for feathers, coins for woven mats. The sailors marvel at parrots perched on shoulders, their feathers blazing in colors more vivid than any cloth in Seville. They taste new fruits offered cautiously, sweet juices staining their lips. They study tattoos inked into skin, the curve of canoes drawn onto the sand with gestures of pride. And yet, beneath the surface, something larger stirs. The sailors look at these people not only with curiosity, but with calculation. Their simplicity, their openness, the abundance of their land, all of it burns in Columbus's mind as a sign that this world might be bent toward Spain's will. As dusk begins to fall, the islanders melt back into the trees, their figures swallowed by shadow. The sailors watch them vanish, hearts pounding, unsure if they have witnessed a welcome or a warning. The air grows cooler, the surf louder, and the forest once more keeps its secrets. Columbus gazes after them, his eyes alight not with uncertainty, but with vision. To him, the encounter is not an ending, but a beginning, the first step in a story that will ripple outward across oceans, kingdoms, and centuries. The sun sinks low, spilling a last wash of crimson and gold across the sea. The sailors, still buzzing from the day's discoveries, gather driftwood and palm fronds along the beach. Soon, flames flicker to life, their light chasing shadows into the forest. Smoke rises into the night, carrying with it the scent of burning wood mixed with salt air. For the first time in more than a month, the men sit on solid ground, firelight dancing across their faces. They sit in clusters around the flames, chewing the fruits they collected, passing gourds of sweet water from hand to hand. Some laugh with a kind of delirium, marveling aloud at their survival. Others sit in silence, staring into the fire, their eyes haunted by the memory of storm and hunger. One sailor kneels, pressing his forehead to the sand in prayer, whispering thanks for deliverance. But as the laughter fades, unease creeps back in. Beyond the circle of firelight, the forest looms, alive with noises they cannot name. Strange insects hum in the trees. The cries of unseen animals echo through the dark, harsh and unfamiliar. Every snapping twig draws heads around. Every rustle makes hands twitch toward knives. The memory of those footprints lingers, reminding them that they are not alone here. Columbus sits apart from the men, a small lantern beside him, parchment spread across his knees. By the wavering light, he writes in his journal, his quill scratching steadily. He records what they saw: the land, the trees, the water, the people. His words are precise, but beneath them hums a current of awe. He notes the openness of the islanders, their lack of armor, their ornaments of shells and feathers. He writes, too, of their innocence, and of their potential usefulness. For Columbus, this is not just memory. It is record, proof for the crowns of Spain that his voyage has not been folly. Each line he writes carries the weight of ambition, riches to be claimed, souls to be converted, lands to be possessed. To his men, this beach is a resting place. To him, it is the beginning of empire. The men's talk drifts between wonder and fear. One recalls the parrots, their feathers blazing red and green. Another marvels at the sweetness of the fruit. But then the whispers turn to the islanders, their numbers, their weapons, their eyes watching from the trees. What if they return with more? One mutters, his voice low. What if tonight we are surrounded? His words hang heavy in the night air. To ease the tension, a sailor begins to sing, a rough Castilian hymn, his voice cracked but steady. Slowly, others join in. Their voices rise into the dark, weaving with the crackle of fire, carrying across the waves. The hymn is both comfort and shield, a reminder of home in a world that feels anything but familiar. The fire burns lower, embers glowing red. Men drift into uneasy sleep, sprawled on the sand, cloaks wrapped tightly against the night air. Some keep their weapons close, blades gleaming faintly in the glow. Others sleep so deeply that not even the forest sounds stir them. Columbus remains awake the longest. He lifts his head often, scanning the tree line, listening. The islanders have not returned, but he is certain they are watching, just beyond the glow of the fires. His gaze lingers on the shadows, as though he can sense the weight of unseen eyes. He closes his journal, tucking it carefully away, and whispers a prayer into the night. Gratitude for the land, a plea for protection, and a vow that what they found here would not remain untouched. The waves lap against the shore, steady and patient. The fires crackle, and all around, the forest hums with life. The men sleep, the ocean breathes, and the new world waits, its silence carrying both promise and warning. The first light of dawn spreads across the beach, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. The sailors stir slowly from their uneasy rest, sand clinging to their cloaks, the fire's embers faintly glowing beside them. Some stretch stiff limbs, Others rub their eyes and look out at the water where the ships rest at anchor, their masts silhouetted against the pale horizon. For a moment, there is silence, a rare, fragile stillness after weeks of storms and hunger. Then the forest calls again. Birds shriek in wild, unfamiliar songs. Insects hum in thick, buzzing choruses. A monkey's cry echoes faintly from the trees. The sailors look at one another, half in awe, half in fear. They are strangers in a world that seems alive in every direction. Columbus rises quickly, his cloak still damp with dew, his face sharp with purpose. He summons a small group of men, those he trusts most, those less shaken by fear. "We go inland," he says, "to see what God has placed before us." His voice is steady, commanding, as though the path were clear before them. For him, hesitation is not allowed. Exploration is both duty and destiny. The chosen men prepare, tightening belts, slinging crossbows over their shoulders, checking knives at their sides. One carries a small banner of the royal standard, its fabric folding and snapping in the morning breeze. Others clutch rosaries, whispering prayers under their breath. The air is charged with anticipation. They step off the beach and into the shade of the trees. The shift is immediate. The cool dampness of the forest wraps around them, replacing the open breath of the sea. Sunlight filters through a canopy of green, dappling the earth in shifting patterns. The ground is soft beneath their boots, strewn with fallen leaves and vines that curl like serpents. Every breath tastes of life. Loamy soil, flowering plants, sap that drips thick and sweet. The sailors murmur as they move deeper. They point to fruits dangling in clusters, golden, purple, red, their skins gleaming with dew. They touch the bark of trees broader than any in Spain, their roots twisting like muscles from the earth. They marvel at birds that burst from branches in flashes of color, wings catching the light like stained glass in a cathedral. Columbus notes everything. He pauses to collect leaves, to break open fruit and examine the seeds, to study the soil crumbling rich between his fingers. His mind races as he envisions what will fill his journals, what he will present to Ferdinand and Isabella. He sees not only abundance, but wealth. Crops to be harvested, timber to be claimed, resources to be bent toward empire. One sailor finds a trail, a narrow path beaten through undergrowth. The men stiffen, gripping weapons, exchanging wary looks. Proof again that they are not the first to walk here. The footprints seen the day before were no accident. People move in this forest, unseen but certain. Columbus orders the men to follow. They walk cautiously, every sound amplified. The crack of a branch beneath a boot, the hum of insects rising and falling like a tide. Soon the path opens into a small clearing, sunlight spilling onto grass bright as emerald. At its center stands a cluster of huts, woven from palm and cane, their roofs sloping low. Smoke drifts faintly from a fire pit, though no one is there. The sailors freeze, eyes wide. Some whisper prayers, others lift crossbows halfway. The place feels abandoned, yet lived in. Mats neatly laid, clay pots still warm to the touch, tools resting where they had been left. Columbus steps forward, his gaze sweeping across the scene. To him, it is confirmation of what he has already decided. These people are simple, unarmed, unthreatening. He turns to his men. "They will be good servants," he mutters, more to himself than to them. His words hang in the humid air, heavy with implication. The sailors move through the huts, touching baskets woven from reeds, fingering ornaments of shells and bone, lifting small carvings shaped like birds and fish. Their curiosity is tinged with reverence, but also with hunger, for novelty, for treasure, for proof that their journey was worth the suffering. Then, in the distance, voices. The men stiffen, heads snapping toward the forest edge. Figures emerge. Islanders, cautious, moving slowly. Their faces are unreadable as they see the strangers standing among their homes. Women clutch children close, men step forward, their bodies tense, eyes darting between the gleam of steel and the banner snapping in the sailors' hands. The clearing holds its breath. The Europeans and the islanders face one another, the air vibrating with a silence deeper than the forest itself. And in that silence, the weight of history gathers. Two worlds, each unfamiliar to the other, stare across a narrow space that will never again be bridged by innocence. The clearing trembles with silence. On one side, the sailors stand among the palm-thatched huts, clutching crossbows, knives, and the banner of Spain. On the other, the islanders step cautiously into view, their bodies taut with wariness. The women cling to children, pulling them behind. The men hold spears, though not raised in threat, more in defense, a natural extension of their presence. The Europeans and the islanders regard one another, neither side moving. The air is thick with the mingled scents of smoke, damp earth, and the sweetness of fruit left ripening in baskets. Birds cry from the treetops as though announcing the weight of the moment. Then, slowly, an islander steps forward. His chest is broad, his movements graceful, his expression unreadable. He lowers his spear, letting it rest against the ground. From around his neck, he pulls a string of shells, polished smooth by sea and time, glimmering faintly in the sun. He extends it toward Columbus, his palm open. The sailors stir, murmuring in awe. Columbus steps forward, his boots sinking into the soft grass. He accepts the necklace with both hands, raising it briefly toward the sky before placing it over his own shoulders. He nods deeply, a gesture of respect, though his eyes glint with calculation. To him, it is not merely a gift. It is a sign of submission, of willingness. Wanting to seal the moment, Columbus gestures to one of his men. The sailor produces a bead of colored glass, brilliant in the sunlight, and presses it into the islander's hand. The man turns it over, marveling at its perfect smoothness, its unnatural shine. His companions murmur, their eyes wide. The balance shifts. Something simple to the Europeans appears miraculous here. One by one, others step forward. Islanders offer woven mats, feathered ornaments, carved figures. The sailors respond with trinkets of glass, small bells, bits of metal. Each gift feels monumental, yet unequal. Two worlds measuring each other through objects that neither truly understands. The exchange softens the air. Children creep forward, peering with wide eyes at the sailors' beards, their helmets, the way the steel of a blade flashes in the light. A sailor, emboldened, lets a boy touch the edge of his dagger, pulling it away just before the child's finger meets the sharpness. The boy gasps, half in fear, half in wonder. Laughter ripples, nervous but real. Still, misunderstanding threads through the scene. A sailor reaches for a woven basket without asking. The woman who carried it stiffens, her smile faltering. Another sailor touches a man's tattooed arm, tracing the ink with his finger. The islander pulls back, expression cool. The gestures are small, but they carry the weight of different worlds brushing against each other without knowing the rules. Columbus observes everything, his mind turning not on the gifts themselves, but on what they imply. He notes their lack of armor, their openness, their willingness to give freely. To him, it is a sign not only of generosity, but of opportunity. In his journal, he will later write that they would make good servants, that they could be converted to Christianity with ease. To his men, the moment feels like peace. To Columbus, it feels like possession. As the sun climbs higher, the islanders beckon the strangers deeper into the clearing, offering food. Roasted fish, fruits split open to reveal glistening flesh, roots cooked over coals. The sailors eat eagerly, savoring flavors unlike any they have known. Sweetness bursts on their tongues, smoky richness fills their mouths. After weeks of dry biscuit and salt pork, it is almost unbearable in its abundance. They wipe juice from their beards, licking their fingers like hungry children. The islanders watch, smiling at their delight. Some laugh softly, amused by the strangers' ravenous appetites. For a brief span, laughter bridges the distance between them. Yet even in laughter, the unspoken remains. The Europeans marvel at a world they cannot yet name. The islanders marvel at men clothed in metal and carrying fire in their hands. Each side sees wonder. Each side sees difference. Neither sees the storm that history is preparing to unleash. As dusk falls again, Columbus signals for his men to withdraw. The islanders do not resist. They watch silently as the strangers retreat toward the beach, carrying new trinkets, new memories, new hungers. Behind them, the huts glow in firelight, the people gathering close, whispering about the pale men who had walked into their world. On the sand, the sailors speak in hushed voices of the day's wonders, the food, the ornaments, the generosity. Some call it paradise. Others mutter about riches to come. Columbus listens, saying little. His gaze drifts across the water, his mind already writing the narrative he will send back to Spain, a land rich with promise, a people ready to be claimed. The waves lap at the shore, steady and eternal. The fires die low. And two worlds, having touched for the first time, begin the slow and irreversible process of binding and breaking one another. Night gathers once more. The sky a vast canopy of stars brighter than any the men remember from Spain. The sea breathes steadily against the shore, a rhythm older than memory, while the sailors sleep sprawled on the sand, their bellies full, their exhaustion deep. The forest hums with life, the shrill cries of insects, the distant call of animals. But for the first time since they left Europe, the men sleep without fear of drowning. Columbus, however, does not sleep. He sits near a small lantern, its flame trembling in the breeze, parchment balanced across his knees. The quill scratches steadily, each line soaking into the fibers of the page. His journal is more than record. It is testimony, proof, a weapon of words that will travel back across the ocean to convince kings and courts that his vision was not folly. He writes of the island's beauty, of the soft sands, the towering trees, the abundance of fruit, the clarity of water. His descriptions are alive with wonder, almost poetic, as though he himself cannot believe the paradise he has touched. But woven through his awe is calculation. He notes the richness of the soil, the timbers that could build fleets, the resources ripe for claim. His eyes do not rest simply on what is. They leap forward to what might be harvested, traded, conquered. And he writes of the people. His quill pauses here as he considers the islanders' faces, their ornaments, their generosity. He records that they are gentle, open-handed, willing to give freely. He notes their lack of weapons, their astonishment at glass beads and bells, their wonder at steel. His words are laced with admiration, but also with judgment. They would be good servants, he writes. With 50 men we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever is required. The quill scratches on, steady, merciless. For Columbus, the islanders are not merely people, they are potential. Their innocence, to him, is not a quality to be cherished, but a resource to be molded, converted, controlled. In his mind, they are souls to be brought into Christendom, hands to be put to labor, voices to sing praises not to their own gods, but to Spain's. He pauses, lifting his head toward the horizon. The lantern's glow softens his features, but his eyes are sharp, reflecting the fire of ambition. He whispers a prayer, not only of thanks, but of foresight, that this land, these people, will be the key to glory. that the crowns of Castile and Aragon will see in his words not only discovery, but dominion. Behind him, a few sailors stir, murmuring in sleep. One laughs softly, dreaming, perhaps, of food or gold. Another mutters a prayer, clutching a rosary even in slumber. The camp is peaceful, but Columbus feels no peace. His mind is restless, alive with visions of ships heavy with riches, of courts awestruck by his triumph, of history etching his name among its greatest. The quill resumes. He writes of the crosses he plans to plant, of the chapels that could rise from these shores, of the souls to be saved. But beneath the pious words lies something rawer, sharper: empire. When at last he sets the quill aside, the lantern burns low. He closes the journal carefully, tucking it into a chest as though sealing a covenant. Around him, the men dream in innocence. In the forest, unseen eyes may still be watching, whispering among themselves about the pale strangers who came from the sea. And above, the stars blaze silently, indifferent to the histories being forged below. Columbus stretches, his cloak rustling against the sand. He stares into the dark forest, his jaw tightening. To his men, this day has been salvation. To him, it is only the beginning. He sees not just this island, but an entire world opening before him, a world he believes he is destined to claim. The surf rolls in, steady, eternal. The fire gutters low. And with each breath, the dream of empire grows heavier, brighter, more dangerous in the mind of the man who has crossed the ocean to find it. The days that follow unfold with a rhythm both wondrous and uneasy. Each morning, the sailors rise with the sun, their bodies refreshed by solid ground, their spirits lifted by the abundance around them. Each day, they venture further inland, their boots pressing into trails beaten by generations of islanders, their eyes wide at the wealth of life that spreads before them. The forest reveals itself in layers. Palms give way to groves heavy with fruit, vines drooping low with gourds, roots thick and edible. Streams glitter in the sunlight, their waters cool and clean, swarming with fish that dart like flashes of silver. Birds explode into the air in bursts of color, red, blue, green, feathers gleaming with an iridescence none of the sailors have ever seen. To men who had nearly starved at sea, the land feels like a feast without end. And always, there are the people. The islanders move with grace, appearing from the forest with offerings, baskets of fruit, clay jars of water, woven mats for the sailors to rest upon. They smile easily, their gestures open, their words a music that none of the Europeans can yet understand. Children creep closer each day, laughing as they mimic the strangers' beards, their helmets, the way they kneel to pray before eating. The sailors are astonished. To them, the islanders seem to live without want. Their homes are simple, yet sturdy. Their food abundant. Their ornaments of shells, feathers, and gold gleam with a beauty that feels effortless. But to the Europeans, it is the gold that matters. Thin bands gleam on wrists and necks, small nuggets polished into ornaments. The men notice, their eyes lingering too long. They whisper among themselves in hushed tones, their hunger for wealth gnawing louder than their gratitude for survival. Columbus watches closely. He accepts the gifts, the food, the friendship offered, but his mind is elsewhere. He questions the islanders in gestures and broken words, pointing to the gold, miming the shape of a crown, repeating the word, oro. The islanders smile, nod, and gesture inland toward other islands, other people. Columbus notes this eagerly, his quill scratching by firelight each night. There is more gold to be found, always more. The sailors, too, begin to shift. Their awe of the people turns slowly to calculation. Where they once marveled at the islanders' generosity, they now see weakness. "They have no iron," one mutters, tapping the blade of his dagger. "No horses, no armor." Another adds, "They trade gold for beads, for bells." Laughter follows, laughter edged with greed, yet not all feel triumph. Some sailors grow uneasy. They see the islanders' openness, their willingness to give without suspicion, and it unsettles them. At night, one man whispers, "It feels like taking from children." Another shakes his head, crossing himself. "God forgive us if we bring harm to people who have shown us nothing but kindness." But these voices are drowned out by others, louder, hungrier, eager to report riches to Spain. The islanders continue to welcome them. They guide them through groves of cassava and maize, show them fish traps woven with intricate care, invite them to sit around their fires. They paint their faces with colors ground from earth and plant, laughing as children smear pigment on the pale cheeks of sailors unused to such play. For a fleeting moment, it feels like peace. Two worlds sharing, discovering, marveling at one another. And yet, beneath it all, the tide is shifting. Every gift the islanders give becomes a tally in Columbus's mind. Every ornament of gold becomes a promise of mines, yet unseen. Every display of openness becomes, to him, proof that these people might be bent to Spain's will. At night, when the campfires burn low, Columbus writes again. His journal fills with descriptions of beauty, yes, but also of strategy. He records the size of the villages, the strength of their spears, the way the islanders seem to look up to him. He writes not only as a witness, but as a planner, sketching the outlines of conquest beneath the language of wonder. The sailors drift into uneasy sleep, some dreaming of riches, others haunted by guilt they cannot name. And in the forest beyond, the islanders whisper among themselves, watching the strangers who have stepped into their lives. They smile by day, but by night they wonder what it means that men clothed in steel have planted banners in their sand. The days of wonder are not yet gone, but already the shadow of what is to come darkens the edges of paradise. The days of marvel and laughter begin to shift. At first it is subtle, a change in tone, a sharpness in the sailors' eyes when they see gold glimmer on an islander's wrist or hanging from a child's neck. What once drew wonder now draws hunger. The islanders still come freely, offering baskets of food, brightly feathered ornaments, shells polished smooth by the sea. But the sailors' hands linger too long on what is given. They ask for more. They gesture insistently toward the gold, repeating the word oro, pointing inland with restless urgency. Columbus watches all of this, his face unreadable. At night, by firelight, he reminds his men of discipline. "We are guests," he says, his voice stern. "You will not take by force. We will win with patience, with faith." His words are strong, but even he cannot hide the glint of hunger in his eyes when he speaks of gold. The men nod, some reluctantly. Hunger gnaws at more than their stomachs. It gnaws at their pride, their ambition. Weeks at sea, near death, and now they stand in a land that seems to overflow with riches. How long can they resist reaching for what they believe God has led them to? Small frictions begin to appear. A sailor barters for a gold ornament, offering beads in return. When the islander hesitates, the sailor grows agitated, pressing forward, his tone sharp. The islander recoils, pulling back into the forest. Whispers spread among the villagers, shadows flickering in their eyes. Another day, a sailor wanders into a hut, lifting a carved idol to inspect its weight. The family inside stiffens, their smiles faltering, their voices hushed. Though no harm is done, the gesture lingers like a bruise. What is sacred to one is novelty to another. Columbus tightens his grip. He stations men to watch over others, insists on order in every interaction. He knows the cost of chaos. Mutiny nearly consumed them at sea, and he will not allow it to consume them here. But even his discipline cannot erase the glances, the murmurs, the restless craving for more. The islanders, too, begin to change. They still bring food, still greet the strangers with open hands, but their smiles are edged now with caution. Their eyes linger longer on the steel blades, the helmets, the banners planted in the sand. Children who once laughed freely now hide behind mothers' legs. Men keep their spears closer, though still lowered. The forest seems to watch more intently. Shadows gather beneath the trees, whispers rise at night, distant fires flicker on the horizon. The Europeans tell themselves it is nothing, but unease gnaws at the edges of their camp. One evening, a quarrel breaks out among the sailors themselves. A man claims another has hidden a piece of gold offered in trade, keeping it secret rather than sharing it. Voices rise, fists clench, knives flash in the firelight. Columbus storms between them, his voice cutting sharp through the chaos. He drags them apart, his fury scorching. "We are one body," he snaps. "One purpose. Any man who forgets this forgets God's will." The men fall silent, cowed, though resentment smolders beneath the surface. That night, Columbus returns to his journal. He writes of the beauty of the land, of the docility of its people, of the promise it holds for Spain. But his words sharpen as he writes of discipline. He knows this venture can collapse as easily on land as it almost did at sea. His pen presses harder against the parchment. Control is everything. Without it, paradise will fracture. The surf murmurs against the shore. The sailors sleep uneasily, some clutching their trinkets of gold beneath their cloaks, others dreaming of Spain and the riches they might bring home. And beyond the fires, the islanders whisper in their own tongue, glancing toward the strangers who have arrived from the sea. Their voices carry a question unspoken but heavy. Are these men guests, or something else entirely? The cracks are small, but they are spreading. Paradise trembles at the edge of shadow. The days grow heavier, their brightness shadowed by unease. At first, the islanders had come daily, their arms full of fruit and fish, their children laughing as they touched the strangers' cloaks and beards. Now their visits are less frequent, their smiles thinner, their eyes sharper. The sailors notice the change. They whisper about it at night, their words uneasy. They know us now. They are watching us more closely. Columbus senses it too, though he cloaks his recognition in certainty. At dawn, he calls his men together on the beach. They stand in a line, weary but alert, the banner of Spain snapping in the wind above their heads. His voice is loud, ringing with command. We are the hand of God upon this land. We carry the cross, the crown, and the fire of civilization. These people are simple, open, but do not mistake openness for strength. We must show them we are not merely wanderers, but rulers. Discipline, faith, and unity, or all is lost. The sailors nod, though unease flickers in their faces. Some hear his words as reassurance. Others hear them as a warning. When the islanders return that afternoon, they keep to the edge of the clearing. Their steps are slower, more deliberate. They still offer gifts, a basket of roots, a bird with feathers like fire, but their hands tremble slightly as they extend them. The sailors reach eagerly, too eagerly, their fingers grasping. A boy snatches at a gold ornament hanging from an islander's neck, and the man jerks back, his eyes flashing. For a heartbeat, the clearing tightens with tension, until Columbus steps forward, arms wide, smiling with a practiced warmth. He speaks gently, his words incomprehensible to the islanders, but his tone smooth, coaxing. He offers them more glass beads, more bells, gestures of exchange. The islanders accept, but their smiles no longer reach their eyes. That night, by firelight, Columbus writes in his journal. His words are careful but edged. They are timid. With few men, they can be subdued. They would easily accept the faith, for they have no idols strong enough to resist it. His pen scratches harder, pressing deep grooves into the parchment. He sees the shift not as warning, but as opportunity. Meanwhile, the sailors murmur among themselves. They trade stories of what they saw in the huts, carvings of strange figures, ornaments of bone and shell, small nuggets of gold. Each tale grows in the telling until the huts become treasuries, the ornaments become mines of wealth. The island itself becomes a vault waiting to be unlocked. Their voices thrum with restlessness, with impatience. The next day, the islanders do not come at all. The forest is silent, its green wall closed. The sailors grow anxious, muttering about ambushes, about hostility. Some pace along the shore, gripping their weapons, as though battle might spring from the trees at any moment. Others mutter darkly about taking what is not freely given. Columbus gathers them again, his expression iron. "Patience," he commands. "They will return, and if they do not, we will go to them. This land is ours now, by right and by faith." Their silence is not refusal, it is fear, and fear will bend. The men nod, but unease does not leave them. They watch the forest edge, waiting for movement that does not come. The laughter of children is gone. The chatter of voices has stilled. Only the surf and the wind remain. That night, the campfires burn lower, their glow flickering on wary faces. Some sailors sleep with blades in their hands. Others lie awake, staring at the tree line, listening to the forest's breathing. The air is thick with expectation, heavy with the weight of something unspoken. The welcome has waned. The silence is growing. And in that silence, the line between guest and invader begins to sharpen. The silence of the forest does not break. Days pass, and the islanders' visits grow scarce, their presence now glimpsed only at a distance. A figure at the edge of the trees, a faint sound of voices carried on the wind. The generosity that once poured freely has thinned into careful offerings, and then into absence. The sailors grow restless, their stomachs still full, but their minds gnawed by longing, for more food, more gold, more proof that their suffering has earned its reward. Columbus does not waver. Each morning, he rallies his men on the beach beneath the snapping banner of Spain. His words ring with iron conviction. God has delivered this land into our hands. The people are timid, simple. They will yield. And this place, this paradise, is only the beginning. The men nod, some with eager hunger, others with unease they dare not voice. Their eyes drift always to the ornaments of gold they glimpsed, to the feathered cloaks, to the shells that gleamed with strange beauty. What had begun as awe has become appetite. Columbus, in his journal, shapes the story he will carry back across the sea. He writes of verdant lands, of rivers sweet with water, of people who can be bent to faith and service. He records not silence and withdrawal, but openness and opportunity. His words are deliberate, crafted not only to tell what happened, but to secure what will come. Ships, soldiers, priests, settlers, empire. One evening, the sailors gather around the fire, their faces lit by the glow, their voices hushed but urgent. Some whisper of the islanders' eyes, how the smiles no longer reached them, how their laughter had faded into silence. Others argue over trinkets, over who will carry home what little gold they already hold. Their voices rise, clash, fall again. Columbus silences them with a glance, his gaze burning with something larger than their quarrels. "Do you not see?" he says, his voice low but sharp. "This is the edge of a world unimagined by kings or scholars. Spain will rise greater than Rome, greater than all Christendom because of what we claim here. You will not quarrel over scraps when the table is yet to be set. Obey, and you will feast on history." The men fall silent, their eyes reflecting the firelight. Some feel pride, others fear, but none can escape the sense that they stand at the threshold of something vast and terrible. The night deepens. The surf whispers against the shore. The stars burn high, silent witnesses to the moment. And in that silence, the weight of history presses close. For what began as a stormy night at sea has become the dawn of a new age. The footprints in the sand are not only of sailors and islanders, but of all who will follow. Conquerors, settlers, priests, merchants, soldiers. The world has shifted. The sailors cannot yet know the cost, nor the islanders the depth of what has begun. But in the quiet of that beach, with banners planted and journals filled, the tide of history has turned. It was not only land that Columbus sighted in the stormy night, it was a new chapter of the human story. A chapter of wonder and abundance, of greed and conquest, of beauty and loss. And it began here, with the cry that shattered the ocean's silence. Tierra, Tierra,